It was supposed to be just another ordinary day for Dr. Laura, responding to yet another emergency call. The situation seemed routine. A 5-year-old girl needed urgent care. However, upon arriving at the scene, Laura was confronted with something she could never have anticipated. There, attending to the child, was her husband, who was supposed to be on a business trip. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. Laura always had a passion for medicine, especially for emergency care. From a young age, she dreamed of making a difference in people's lives during their most critical moments. Her dedication led her to become a respected emergency doctor, working in ambulances and responding to urgent calls throughout the city. With her brown hair always tied back in a practical ponytail and her attentive green eyes, Laura was known for her calmness and efficiency under pressure. Dressed in her navy blue uniform, she exuded confidence to patients even in the hardest times. Despite her passion for children, Laura still hesitated about the idea of having her own. She was well aware of the enormous responsibility that came with raising a child, having closely witnessed so many delicate situations involving young patients. For now, she was content to care for other people's children in her work. Marcel, on the other hand, was a successful businessman. As the chief financial officer of a large company, he spent his days analysing spreadsheets, attending meetings, and making important decisions. Always impeccably dressed in his dark suits, Marcel had a serious and professional demeanour. However, away from the office, Marcel revealed a more relaxed side. His brown eyes would light up when he talked about his passions: travel, gastronomy, and of course his beloved wife, Laura. The couple met about 4 years ago on a rainy autumn night. Laura had just finished an exhausting shift at the hospital and decided to stop at a cafe for something warm before heading home. She chose a table by the window, watching the raindrops trickling down the glass as she tried to unwind after a long day. While waiting for her order, Laura was surprised by a man who approached her table with a subtle smile. "Excuse me, may I join you?" Marcel asked, with a gentle expression and a look that conveyed a mix of curiosity and friendliness. Laura, a little taken aback by the unexpected approach, hesitated for a moment but soon felt inclined to accept. Something in the way Marcel looked at her with genuine interest and unhurried manner made her feel at ease. She nodded and gestured to the empty chair in front of her. Marcel sat down, and after a brief exchange of small talk about the rainy weather and the comfort of the cafe, the conversation naturally flowed into deeper topics. Laura spoke about her work as a doctor, the challenges and rewards of saving lives. Marcel, in turn, shared his experiences in the corporate world, discussing the pressures and responsibilities of dealing with large sums of money. Despite the differences in their professions and routines, they discovered they had a lot in common. Both valued dedication to their work, but also dreamed of finding a balance with their personal lives. They both loved travelling and experiencing new cultures, and most importantly, they were open to new possibilities in life. When they realised it was already late at night and the cafe was about to close, reluctant to say goodbye, they exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet again. That casual meeting turned into a passionate romance, and 4 years later, Laura and Marcel were married. Now newlyweds, the couple was enjoying the delights of the early days of marriage. Their apartment in the city centre was a cosy refuge, decorated with mementos from their travels together and photos of happy moments. Their evenings were filled with romantic dinners prepared by Marcel, who discovered a hidden culinary talent and binge-watching favourite shows on the couch. On weekends, they explored local parks and museums, had picnics outdoors, or simply enjoyed each other's company at home. Laura loved waking up on Sunday mornings to find Marcel preparing an elaborate breakfast, complete with pancakes and fresh fruit. The couple faced the normal challenges of a new marriage, adjusting routines, sharing household chores, learning to compromise in small arguments. But their love and mutual respect helped them overcome any obstacle. They felt truly blessed to have found each other. On a Friday night, Laura and Marcel decided to have dinner at their favourite Italian restaurant to celebrate another month of marriage. The atmosphere was cosy, with dim lights and soft music in the background. Laura wore a blue dress that highlighted her eyes, while Marcel had chosen a dress shirt and slacks. They were chatting excitedly about their weekend plans when Marcel's phone rang. He looked at the screen with a surprised expression and excused himself to answer. Laura noticed that her husband seemed tense as he walked away to take the call, which was unusual for him. When Marcel returned to the table, his demeanour had changed. He seemed distant and worried, picking at his food without really eating. Laura asked if everything was okay, and he vaguely responded that it was a work issue. "A problem has come up with one of our biggest clients," Marcel explained. "I'm going to have to travel early tomorrow to resolve it in person. I should be gone for 2 days." Laura was disappointed with the news, but she understood the importance of her husband's work. She offered words of support and said she would be waiting for him when he returned. Marcel smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. He seemed lost in thought for the rest of the night. The next 2 days passed slowly for Laura. She tried to keep herself busy with work and household chores, but she missed her husband's presence. Marcel's messages and calls were brief and spaced out, which she attributed to his full schedule of meetings. On the night of the second day, Laura was on duty in the ambulance. The shift had been quiet so far, with only a few routine incidents. She was taking advantage of a moment of calm to read a book when the radio sounded, announcing a new call. "We have an emergency. 5-year-old girl, possible fall." Laura felt her heart race, as it always did before attending to a case involving children. She put away the book and mentally prepared herself as the ambulance headed towards the indicated location. As they got closer to the destination, Laura began to recognize the surrounding streets and houses. A strange feeling washed over her when she realized they were near her mother-in-law's neighborhood. Intrigued, she asked the driver to confirm the exact address. "It's right here," he replied, pointing to a familiar house. Laura's stomach tightened. Why would there be a hurt child at her mother-in-law's house? Marcel had never mentioned having nieces, nephews, or any other children in the family. Confused and apprehensive, she stepped out of the ambulance as soon as they stopped. The scene that awaited her was surreal. In the backyard of the house, a small girl lay unconscious under a large tree. And, to Laura's utter shock, her husband Marcel was there, kneeling beside the child with an expression of pure panic on his face. For a moment, Laura was paralysed, unable to process the scene before her. Marcel looked up and saw her, his face paling even more. But there was no time for explanations now. Laura's training kicked in, and she ran to examine the girl. The child was about 5 years old, with light brown hair and freckles on her nose. She was unconscious, with a visible bump on her forehead. Laura performed a quick assessment, checking vital signs and possible fractures. "What happened?" she asked, maintaining a professional tone despite her internal confusion. She was trying to climb the tree," Marcel stammered, clearly in shock. "I just looked away for a second, and then I heard the sound of the fall." Laura nodded, focusing on the care. She instructed her team to immobilise the girl and prepare her for transport. Fortunately, her vital signs were stable, but tests were necessary to rule out any internal injuries. When it was time to take the child to the ambulance, Marcel automatically got up to accompany her. Laura looked at him, thousands of questions in her eyes, but only said, "Come on, there's room for you too." During the ride to the hospital, Laura monitored the girl's vital signs while trying to ignore the disturbing presence of her husband. Marcel held the child's hand, murmuring words of comfort. The silence between the couple was heavy, laden with tension and unasked questions. Finally, when they were almost at the hospital, Marcel spoke in a low voice. "Laura, I need to tell you something. This girl, she is my daughter." The words hit Laura like a punch to the stomach. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to maintain her professional composure. "Let's take care of her first," was all she could manage to say. At the hospital, the girl was quickly taken for examinations. Laura followed the process closely, ensuring that all protocols were followed. Marcel stayed in the waiting room, looking completely lost and vulnerable. After a few anguishing hours, the test results brought relief. Besides the bump on her head and some scratches, the girl hadn't suffered any serious injuries. She began to wake up, confused but responsive. Only then, with the child out of danger and under the care of the hospital staff, did Laura feel she could finally confront her husband. She found him sitting alone in a corner of the waiting room, his face buried in his hands. "Marcel," she called softly. He looked up, his eyes red and tired. "I think we need to talk." They found an empty room and closed the door. For a long moment they remained silent, the weight of unspoken revelations hanging between them. It was Marcel who finally broke the silence, his voice trembling and hesitant. I only found out about her existence 2 days ago," he began. "Do you remember that call at the restaurant? It was Camila, an ex-girlfriend from years ago. She told me about Alice, our daughter." Laura listened in silence as Marcel explained the situation. Camilla had never revealed the pregnancy, deciding to raise the daughter on her own. But recently, Alice had begun asking questions about her father, insisting on meeting him. Reluctantly, Camilla finally decided to get in touch with Marcel. "I was in shock," Marcel continued. "I didn't know how to react, how to tell you. Camilla suggested that I spend a few days with Alice so that we could get to know each other. I chose my mother's house for this meeting, thinking it would be a neutral and safe environment." Laura was processing the information, a mixture of emotions swirling inside her. Anger at the lie, sadness at the broken trust, confusion about the future, but also, surprisingly, a touch of compassion for the dilemma Marcel had faced. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, her voice more hurt than accusatory. Marcel lowered his eyes, ashamed. "I was scared," he admitted. "Afraid of disappointing you, of ruining our recent happiness. I thought if I could handle it on my own, I might find a way to tell you gradually. It was selfish and stupid, I know." Laura took a deep breath, trying to organise her thoughts. Part of her wanted to scream, demand explanations, express all the hurt she was feeling. But another part, the part that dealt with crisis situations daily, knew this was not the time for impulsive reactions. "Marcel, look at me," she said firmly. When their eyes met, she continued, "A child can never be a reason for a fight between us. I'm not upset about the existence of your daughter. What deeply hurts me is that you didn't trust me enough to share something so important." The words seemed to hit Marcel like lightning. His shoulders dropped, and for the first time since this whole situation began, he let the tears flow freely. "I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "I messed everything up, didn't I? You have every right to be furious with me." Laura felt her own throat tighten with emotion. She stepped closer and held her husband's hands. "Yes, I am hurt, and it will take time to rebuild the trust between us. But Marcel, we are a team. Husband and wife, we should face challenges together, no matter how daunting they seem." Marcel nodded, squeezing Laura's hands. "You're right. I should have trusted you from the beginning. I was a coward." "It's not about cowardice," Laura responded gently. "You were scared and confused. I understand that. But in the future, we need to promise to be honest with each other, no matter what." They remained silent for a few minutes, letting the tension gradually dissipate. Finally, Laura asked, "And now? What do you want to do about Alice?" Marcel hesitated before responding. I want to get to know her better, be a part of her life if she accepts me, but only if you're okay with it. I don't want to do anything that could harm our marriage." Laura felt a wave of affection for her husband, despite everything. "Marcel, she is your daughter. Of course you should be a part of her life. And if you allow me, I would like to get to know her too." The relief on Marcel's face was palpable. "Would you do that? Even after I hid everything from you?" "Yes," Laura replied firmly. because that's what families do. They adapt, grow, and face challenges together. At that moment, a nurse knocked on the door, informing them that Alice had fully awakened and was asking for her father. Marcel looked at Laura, uncertain. "Go," she said with a small smile. "Your daughter needs you now. We'll continue this conversation later at home." Marcel stood up, but before leaving, he pulled Laura into a tight hug. "I love you," he whispered, "and I promise that from now on there will be no more secrets between us." Laura reciprocated the hug, feeling that despite the challenges they still had ahead, they would find a way together. In the weeks and months that followed, Laura's and Marcel's lives underwent a significant transformation. Alice's arrival brought challenges, but also many unexpected joys. In the beginning, there were moments of adjustment and uncertainty. Laura had to deal with her own conflicting feelings, the hurt from Marcel's lie, the occasional jealousy over the special bond between father and daughter, and the anxiety about her new role as a stepmother. Marcel, on the other hand, faced guilt for having missed Alice's early years and the pressure of trying to be a good father while still getting to know his daughter. But gradually, with patience and love, a new family dynamic began to take shape. Alice, a sweet and curious girl, won Laura's heart with her easy laughter and endless questions about her stepmother's work as a doctor. Marcel dedicated himself to being present in his daughter's life, adjusting his work schedule to spend more time with her. He discovered a new facet of himself, that of a caring and playful father, always ready for a bedtime story session or an afternoon at the playground. The relationship with Camilla, Alice's biological mother, also required adjustments and maturity from everyone involved. But over time, and with many honest conversations, they managed to establish a respectful and collaborative co-parenting dynamic. 1 year after that fateful night at the hospital, Laura, Marcel and Alice celebrated the girl's 6th birthday with a big party in their backyard. Watching Alice blow out the candles, surrounded by school friends and family members, Laura felt her heart fill with love and gratitude. She looked at Marcel, who returned her gaze with a smile full of meaning. Both knew that the journey up to that point had not been easy, but each challenge had made them stronger as a couple and as a family. That night, after Alice finally fell asleep, exhausted but happy, Laura and Marcel sat on the porch with a glass of wine, reflecting on the year that had passed. "Do you have any regrets?" Marcel asked softly. "Of forgiving me? Of accepting Alice into our lives?" Laura smiled, intertwining her fingers with her husband's. "Not for a second," she replied with conviction. "Sure, there were tough moments, but look at us now, at the family we've become. It's worth every challenge we faced." Marcel nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. "You know, I used to think the past was something to be left behind. But now I understand that sometimes the past catches up with us, and it's up to us to decide how to integrate it into our present and future. And we chose to integrate it with love," Laura completed. She thought about how her life had changed over the past year. She, who had once hesitated at the idea of motherhood, now couldn't imagine her life without Alice. The girl had brought a new dimension of love and joy to her world. And so, on that tranquil night, Laura and Marcel reaffirmed the most important lesson they had learned: that true love does not fear the challenges of the past, but embraces them as opportunities for growth and strengthening. Together they were ready to write the next chapters of their story, a story of family, overcoming, and unconditional love. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.